The scream tore from Gavin's throat before he even realized it was his. A guttural, animal thing that echoed off the graffiti-scarred walls of the Brooklyn alley like a gunshot in the night. Rain hammered down in sheets, turning the world into a smeared watercolor of neon and regret. But nothing could wash away the metallic tang of blood on his tongue from where he'd bitten his own lip bloody. And there, slumped against the dumpster like a discarded prop from some twisted indie film, was Alex, shirt torn open, chest heaving, that fresh, vicious bite mark on his neck pulsing like a brand of betrayal under the flickering street lamp. "You motherfucker," Gavin whispered, the words barely audible over the storm, but they landed like a slap anyway. Alex's eyes, those hazel eyes that had once promised forever in stolen glances across crowded dive bars, flinched, then hardened into something feral, unrecognizable. In that split second, as lightning cracked the sky wide open, Gavin knew. The love they'd built brick by brick in this unforgiving city was crumbling, and the fall would bury them both. Gavin had always chased the rush of New York like it was the only drug that could quiet the storm inside him. Born in the Rust Belt ghost town of Youngstown, Ohio, he'd fled at 18 with nothing but a duffel bag, a beat-up guitar, and a hunger for something real. Something that didn't taste like the stale cigarettes and unfulfilled dreams of his father's endless shifts at the steel mill. The city had swallowed him whole at first. Auditions that ghosted him, gigs in basement clubs where the tips barely covered the subway fare back to his shoebox apartment in Bushwick. But then came Alex, crashing into his life like a subway train barreling through a blackout. It was a Tuesday night at the Rusty Nail, a hole in the wall on Bedford Avenue where the air hung thick with cheap whiskey and the ghosts of forgotten rock anthems. Gavin was midway through a cover of Springsteen's Thunder Road. His voice gravelly and raw, fingers bleeding from the strings because he'd forgotten his picks again. The crowd was sparse, hipsters nursing IPAs, a couple of tourists snapping pics for their Insta stories, but then he saw him, Alex, leaning against the bar in a faded Ramones tee, dark curls falling over his forehead, that crooked smile cutting through the dim light like a beacon. When Gavin hit the final chorus, Alex locked eyes with him, raised his glass in a toast that felt like fate, and the room tilted just a little. After the set, Alex sidled up with 2 shots of Jameson, his voice low and teasing, laced with that South Philly edge that made every word sound like foreplay. "You sing like you're exorcising demons, man. What's the story behind that fire?" Gavin laughed it off. Too guarded, too used to one-night stands that evaporated with the dawn, but Alex didn't back down. They talked until last call, about everything and nothing. The way the Schuylkill River smelled like home to Alex even after 5 years in the city. How Gavin's mom had OD'd when he was 15 and left him piecing together what family even meant. By the time they stumbled out into the humid August night, hands brushing accidentally on purpose, Gavin felt seen for the first time since crossing the George Washington Bridge. That was 2 years ago, back when love felt like a revolution. 2 broke-ass artists against the world, scraping by on freelance graphic design for Alex and sporadic songwriting for Gavin. Their apartment was a chaotic shrine to it all. Vinyl records stacked like Jenga towers, half-finished canvases leaning against exposed brick walls, a queen bed that sagged in the middle from too many lazy Sundays tangled in sheets. Alex was the dreamer, always sketching feverish portraits of strangers on napkins, whispering about making it big in the East Village galleries. Gavin was the anchor, the one who paid the Con Edison bill when commissions dried up, who held Alex through the panic attacks that hit like summer squalls. But cracks had started forming months ago, subtle at first like fault lines in the pavement after a hard freeze. Alex's late nights at networking events that stretched into dawn. The way his phone buzzed incessantly with notifications he silenced too quickly. Gavin chalked it up to the grind. New York chewed up dreamers and spat out cynics, and he wasn't about to be the jealous boyfriend type. Not when Alex still came home smelling like turpentine and kissed him like he was the only safe harbor in a sea of chaos. "You're my constant, Gav." He'd murmur against Gavin's neck, fingers tracing lazy patterns on his back. "This city's a beast, but we've got each other." The first real fracture came during Pride that June. The parade was a riot of color and chaos. Drag queens on floats belting Gaga, rainbow flags whipping in the wind like battle standards. Gavin and Alex had marched hand in hand for the first time, Gavin's heart pounding with a mix of exhilaration and terror. He'd grown up hiding who he was, stealing glances at the varsity quarterback in the high school locker room, burying his crushes under layers of flannel and denial. Coming out at 22, after a drunken hookup in a Pittsburgh dive bar, had felt like shedding skin. But marching down Fifth Avenue with Alex's fingers laced through his, shouting "Love is love," until his voice gave out, it was redemption, pure and electric. That night, in the crush of after-parties spilling onto the streets, they lost each other in the crowd. Gavin found Alex hours later, backed into a corner of some rooftop bar in Chelsea, laughing too loud with a group of lithe, tattooed guys from Alex's art collective. One of them, tall, with a jaw like a comic book hero and arms inked with swirling galaxies, had his hand on Alex's waist, casual but possessive. Gavin's stomach twisted, but he played it cool, weaving through the throng with 2 fresh beers. "Missed you out there," he said, handing one over, his smile tight. Alex pulled him close, kissed him deep and unapologetic right there under the string lights. "Never, babe. Just schmoozing for that gallery show." The ink-sleeved guy, Jasper, Gavin learned later, winked as he sauntered off, but the seed was planted. Over the next weeks, Alex's sketches shifted, more abstracts, less of the intimate portraits he'd once drawn of Gavin asleep in the mornings. And the late nights multiplied, excuses piling up like unwashed dishes in the sink. By October, the air in their apartment turned brittle, charged with the kind of tension that precedes a nor'easter. Gavin threw himself into a new song cycle, fingers callousing over on his guitar as he poured out lyrics about bridges burned and ghosts in the skyline. Alex retreated into his studio space, a converted closet off the living room, emerging only for hurried meals or perfunctory sex that left them both staring at the ceiling, wondering where the fire had gone. "We're good, right?" Alex asked one night, his voice small as they lay side by side, the radiator hissing like an accusation. Gavin wanted to believe it, God. He did, but the doubt gnawed at him like hunger after a double shift. The breaking point brewed on a crisp Friday in November, the kind of day where the leaves crunched underfoot like brittle promises and the wind off the East River carried whispers of winter. Gavin had scored a rare day gig, scoring a short film for an indie director friend, holed up in a coffee shop on Atlantic Avenue with his laptop and a thermos of black coffee. The script was a gut punch, 2 lovers torn apart by secrets in the shadow of the Brooklyn Bridge, and as he layered in haunting cello swells, his mind wandered to Alex. 3 months since that gallery opening Alex had been so hyped about, the one with Jasper's name on half the press releases. No sale for Alex yet, but he'd been optimistic, disappearing into more collaborations. By evening, Gavin's phone buzzed with a text, "Stuck at the studio late. Love you. Don't wait up." It was the fourth time that week. Something snapped in Gavin, not rage, not yet, but a quiet resolve. He pocketed his phone, slung his guitar case over his shoulder, and headed west toward the loft space Alex shared with a rotating cast of artists in Red Hook. The walk cleared his head, the fading light painting the warehouses in bruised purples and golds. Red Hook felt like a secret pocket of the city. Cobblestone streets lined with forgotten shipyards, the air salty with harbor tang. Alex loved it here, called it his creative womb. Gavin had always felt like an intruder, the straight-edge boyfriend from Ohio who didn't get the abstract expressionism. The loft door was ajar when he arrived, spilling warm light and the low thrum of indie folk from inside. Laughter floated out, rich, intimate, the kind that binds people tighter than sex. Gavin's pulse kicked up, but he pushed the door open anyway, stepping into the cavernous space. Exposed beams overhead, canvases propped like dominoes, the faint scent of weed and oil paint hanging heavy. And there, in the corner by the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the water, was Alex, shirtless, back to the door, his body arched in that familiar way, curls damp with sweat. Jasper was there too, pressed against him, hands roaming like they owned the territory. Gavin froze, the guitar case slipping from his shoulder to thud against the concrete floor. The sound cut through the music like a blade, and they spun apart. Alex's face draining of color, Jasper smirking like he'd been caught with his hand in the cookie jar but didn't give a damn. Gav, Alex breathed, scrambling for his shirt, but it was too late. The damage was etched in the air between them, sharp as shattered glass. What the fuck is this? Gavin's voice was steady, terrifyingly so, as if he'd rehearsed it in nightmares. Alex stammered something about just venting creatively, but Jasper laughed, a low, mocking bark that sealed his fate. Gavin lunged before he could think, fist flying not at Alex but at the smug bastard who dared touch what was his. The punch landed square on Jasper's jaw, a sickening crack that sent him sprawling into a pile of drop cloths. Alex shouted, grabbing Gavin's arm, but the dam had burst. They spilled out into the alley behind the loft, the rain starting as a drizzle that quickly turned biblical. Alex shoved him against the wall, eyes wild. You don't get it. This city, this life, it's eating me alive. Gav, Jasper sees me, the real me, not just the guy who pays the bills. The words were knives, each one twisting deeper. Gavin shoved back, hard enough to send Alex stumbling into the puddle-strewn pavement. And I don't? After everything? The nights I held you when you couldn't breathe. The loans I floated so you could chase your fucking dreams. Rain streamed down his face, mixing with the hot sting in his eyes. Alex's face crumpled, but then he straightened, defiance flickering like a faulty bulb. You think love fixes it all? It's a cage, Gavin. Pretty one, but still a cage. He turned away, shoulders shaking, and that's when Gavin saw it. Peeling back the collar of Alex's hastily donned shirt, the rain revealing the truth in stark relief. A fresh bite mark, teeth imprints blooming purple against pale skin, right where Gavin had once pressed his own lips in promises of forever. The world tilted. Gavin's knees buckled, not from the punch Jasper had thrown in retaliation, no, that grazed his ribs like a whisper, but from the weight of knowing. He dropped to the wet asphalt, trembling in the downpour, hands clawing at the ground as sobs ripped from his chest. The bite wasn't just a mark. It was a map to all the lies, the stolen moments, the slow poison of betrayal seeping into their veins. Alex stood over him, rain masking his own tears, whispering, "I'm sorry." But the words were hollow, carried away by the storm. In that moment, kneeling in the filth of a Brooklyn backstreet, Gavin finally knew love wasn't the cage. Losing it was. The ambulance sirens wailed in the distance like mourners at a funeral no one attended, but Gavin barely registered them as he slumped against the alley wall, the rain turning his bloodied knuckles to a diluted pink. Jasper had gotten in one solid hit, a wild haymaker that split Gavin's lip, before Alex dragged him off, screaming curses that dissolved into pleas. Now, Jasper was gone, vanished into the loft like smoke, and Alex knelt beside Gavin, one hand hovering uncertainly, as if touching him might shatter them both irreparably. "We need to talk," Alex said finally, his voice raw, stripped of its usual Philly bravado. The bite mark throbbed visibly under the collar of his shirt, a livid accusation. Gavin laughed, a bitter, broken sound that echoed off the bricks. "Talk? Now you want to talk? After you've been fucking around behind my back like some bad rom-com cliché?" Alex winced, rain dripping from his curls onto Gavin's shoulder. It's not what you think. Jasper and me started as nothing. Just sketches, late nights blowing off steam. But the city's so damn lonely, Gav. You with your music gigs, me chasing shadows in that loft. One night we had too much wine, and he trailed off, eyes pleading for absolution Gavin couldn't give. Gavin shoved him away, staggering to his feet, the world spinning like a bad trip. "Too much wine? That's your excuse? I've been lonely too, asshole. Staring at the ceiling while you're networking, wondering if I'm enough." But I didn't run to some tattooed prick to fill the void. The words burned coming out, fueled by 2 years of swallowed doubts, the quiet fears that Alex's fire would one day flicker out without him. Alex stood too, close enough that Gavin could smell the faint trace of Jasper's cologne on his skin, sandalwood and regret. "You're enough. God, you're everything. That's why this hurts so much." He reached for Gavin's face, thumb brushing the blood from his lip, and for a treacherous second, Gavin leaned into it, muscle memory overriding the rage. Their lips met, desperate, salty with rain and tears, a kiss that tasted like goodbye. But Gavin pulled back, chest heaving. "Don't. Just don't." He turned and walked away, boots splashing through puddles that reflected the fractured skyline, leaving Alex silhouetted in the alley like a figure from one of his own abstract paintings. Beautiful, broken, irretrievable. The next days blurred into a haze of numbness, the kind that settles after a bender but without the mercy of blackout. Gavin crashed at his bandmate Riley's place in Williamsburg, a cramped walk-up that smelled of patchouli and microwave ramen. Riley, tall, non-binary, with a buzz-cut dyed electric blue and a tattoo of Frida Kahlo on their forearm, didn't pry, just handed him a beer and cranked up the replacements until the walls vibrated. "Heartbreak's a bitch, man," they said that first night, flopping onto the sagging couch beside him. "But it makes killer songs." And it did. Gavin's guitar became his confessor, strings weeping out riffs laced with venom and vulnerability. By Wednesday, he had 3 new tracks sketched out, one a blistering acoustic takedown called Bite Marks and Bullshit, another a slow-burn ballad about the ghosts of Ohio winters haunting Brooklyn summers. He threw himself into rehearsals for a gig at the Bowery Ballroom, the kind of mid-tier venue that could be a launch pad or just another ego bruise. Riley fronted the band, indie folk-punk misfits calling themselves the Fault Lines, and they welcomed Gavin's fury like gasoline on a bonfire. But avoidance only sharpened the edges of the pain. Alex's texts came in waves. Please, let's talk. I fucked up. I love you. Then voicemails. His voice cracking over the line like thin ice. Gav, it's me. I ended it with Jasper. For real this time. Come home. Gavin deleted them all, but each one carved a little deeper, a reminder of the man he'd built his fragile empire around. The apartment, their apartment, loomed in his mind like a crime scene. The coffee mug Alex left on the counter with lipstick smudges that weren't Gavin's, the half-read copy of On the Road dog-eared on the nightstand, the framed photo from their first road trip upstate, arms slung around each other by a bonfire, grins wide as the Hudson. On Friday, Riley dragged him to a queer open mic at a dyke bar in the Lower East Side, all sticky floors and fairy lights strung like spiderwebs. You need to breathe, dude, Riley insisted, shoving a gin and tonic into his hand. The lineup was a mosaic of the city's underbelly. Trans poets spitting fire about dysphoria and desire, leather daddies crooning blues about lost loves, a non-binary cellist whose bow strokes pulled sobs from the crowd like threads from a sweater. Gavin nursed his drink in the corner, the gin burning a path to the hollow in his gut, until Riley signed him up without asking. The stage lights hit like interrogation beams, the mic stand cold against his palm. He launched into bite marks, voice steady at first, then fracturing on the bridge. You left your teeth in my soul. A map to the wreckage you made / now I'm kneeling in the rain, washing your sins away. The room hushed, then erupted whistles, snaps, a few teary-eyed nods from strangers who knew the script all too well. Offstage, Riley hugged him fierce. That's your ticket, Gav. Raw as fuck. But the high crashed when he checked his phone in the bathroom stall. A photo from Alex, time-stamped an hour ago. Him alone in their bed, sheets twisted, eyes red-rimmed and haunted. Caption: This is home without you. Gavin's thumb hovered over the reply button, a war raging in his chest. Love versus loathing. Forgiveness versus the fresh scar of that bite. He didn't text back. Instead, he ghosted through the weekend, busking on the subway platforms for spare change and catharsis, his case filling with crumpled bills from commuters who paused, earbuds dangling, to listen to a stranger howl his heartbreak. Sunday night found him at the Brooklyn Bridge, the wind whipping off the water like accusations, the city lights twinkling like distant stars mocking his solitude. He thought of his mom then, her final note, scribbled on a gas bill. I'm sorry I couldn't be stronger. Strength. Was that what Alex needed? Or was it space to realize what he'd torched? Monday dawned gray and unrelenting, the kind of November slog that makes you question every life choice. Gavin dragged himself back to the apartment at dawn, key turning in the lock like a confession. The place was a tomb, mail piled on the table, a half-eaten pizza congealing on the counter, Alex's sketchpad open to a frantic charcoal rendering of Gavin's face. Jaw set, eyes stormy, titled simply Regret. He was midway through packing a go-bag, essentials only, the guitar staying behind like an anchor, when the door flew open. Alex stood there, disheveled in yesterday's jeans, dark circles under his eyes like bruises. You came back. It wasn't a question, more a prayer answered. Gavin straightened, bag slung over his shoulder, heart hammering a traitorous rhythm. Not for you. For my shit, liar, his brain whispered. Alex stepped inside, closing the door soft as a sigh, the space between them crackling with unspoken grenades. I get it. The anger. I'd be furious too. Alex's hands fidgeted, twisting the hem of his shirt to reveal a glimpse of that fading bite. Now a sickly yellow, a ghost of the wound. But running to Jasper. It was stupid, desperate. He saw my art, hyped it up, made me feel like I wasn't failing. But it was never about him. It was about us, about how scared I am that we're drifting, that this city will grind us down until there's nothing left. Gavin dropped the bag, the thud echoing like a gauntlet thrown. Scared? Try betrayed. Alex. That mark on your neck? It's not just skin. It's every late-night lie, every time you pulled away. I gave you everything, my trust, my heart, my goddamn future. And you let some gallery boy sink his teeth in like it meant nothing. Tears spilled then, hot and unbidden, carving tracks down Alex's cheeks. He closed the distance, hands framing Gavin's face with a tenderness that shattered defenses. It meant nothing. You're the one who means everything. The bite. It's a scar, Gav. Like the one on your collarbone from that bar fight in Pittsburgh. Proof we survived something ugly. His thumb traced it now, a ghost touch that sent shivers racing down Gavin's spine. Gavin's resolve cracked, hands fisting in Alex's shirt, pulling him closer even as his voice broke. How do I believe you? How do I kneel again without remembering the pain? Their foreheads touched, breaths mingling in the charged air, the radiator's hum the only witness. Because I kneel too, Alex whispered, sinking to his knees right there on the worn hardwood, eyes locked on Gavin's. For you. For us. Let me prove it. The vulnerability in his gaze, raw, unfiltered, mirrored Gavin's own, a mirror held up to the mess they'd made. In that moment, with the city humming beyond the windows and the weight of forgiveness heavy as lead, Gavin felt the storm inside him shift, not to calm, but to something fiercer, a reckoning. The weeks that followed were a tightrope walk over an abyss, every step a gamble between reconstruction and relapse. Gavin didn't leave. Not that night, at least. But trust didn't rebuild overnight. It was mortar, slow-drying and prone to cracks under pressure. They agreed to therapy, a queer couples counselor in Midtown named Lena, with salt and pepper hair and eyes that saw through bullshit like X-ray specs. Her office was a sanctuary of sorts, plants climbing the walls like green hope, a rainbow flag draped over the bookshelf, the faint scent of lavender tea calming the jagged edges of their sessions. First visit. Lena leaned forward in her armchair, notepad balanced on her knee. Betrayal isn't a single act. Gavin, it's a theft of safety. What did Alex steal from you? He stared at his hands, knuckles still scabbed from the alley fight, and let it pour. The fear of abandonment echoing his mom's ghost, the hypervigilance that turned every buzzed phone into a siren, the way love now felt like a loaded gun. Alex listened, silent tears tracking down his face, then confessed his own demons, the pressure of unfulfilled art dreams warping into self-sabotage, Jasper's flattery a cheap high masking the terror of mediocrity. Homework from Lena, daily check-ins, no phones at dinner, and vulnerability dates, raw, unfiltered talks over walks in Prospect Park, where the ginkgo trees shed golden leaves like confetti for second chances. It was awkward at first, stilted silences stretching like taffy, but glimmers emerged. One evening, bundled against the chill by the Grand Army Plaza arch. Alex sketched Gavin on a napkin, not the idealized lover, but the real one. Laugh lines deepening, stubble silvering at the temples. "This is you," he said softly, handing it over. "The man I choose, every damn day." Gavin's gigs ramped up, the fault lines landing a spot opening for a bigger act at Rockwood Music Hall. The crowd was electric. Sweaty bodies packed wall to wall, the air thick with beer and anticipation. Gavin poured his soul into the set. Bite marks, evolving into an anthem that had fists pumping and voices harmonizing. We bleed for the beautiful wreckage, kneel for the fire that remains. Backstage, Alex waited with a bouquet of wildflowers swiped from a bodega, eyes shining like he'd just unveiled his magnum opus. They fucked in the green room after, urgent and reclaiming, bodies mapping forgiveness in bites that were tender, not treacherous. But the idol was fragile, tested by the city's relentless grind. December barreled in with a vengeance. Holidays looming like indictments, Alex's gallery showed deadline a guillotine blade. Jasper's shadow lingered too. Whispers from the art scene filtered back via mutual friends. "Heard Alex ditched you for that Philly boy? Nah. Wait, they're back on? Drama." Gavin shoved it down, but paranoia festered, blooming in quiet moments when Alex's phone lit up with unknown numbers. The climax hit on a snow-dusted night 2 weeks before Christmas, the kind where the city hushes under a blanket of white, turning brownstones into storybook facades. Alex's opening was at a trendy spot in Soho, white walls, track lighting, wine flowing like the East River at flood tide. Gavin arrived late, fresh from a songwriting session that had run overtime, tuxedo jacket slung over his arm like armor. The gallery buzzed. Critics in black turtlenecks sipping Chardonnay, collectors with checkbooks at the ready, Jasper holding court by the cheese board like a deposed king. Alex's pieces dominated the space. Massive canvases exploding with color, abstracts that captured the chaos of queer longing. Intertwined forms dissolving into fractals of red and indigo, titles like Kneel and Bite Back. Gavin's chest swelled with pride, navigating the crowd to find him. "These are incredible," he murmured, sliding an arm around Alex's waist amid the throng. Alex beamed, that crooked smile Gavin had fallen for, but tension hummed beneath it, shoulders tight, eyes darting. Then Jasper sauntered over, flute of champagne in hand, his jaw still faintly shadowed from Gavin's punch. "Gavin, right? The musician. Alex here's been raving about your new stuff." The words dripped honeyed venom, and Gavin's grip tightened on Alex's hip, a silent warning. Polite nods exchanged, but as Jasper melted back into the crowd, Alex excused himself to schmooze a potential buyer, leaving Gavin adrift. He wandered the exhibit, glass of Merlot warming his palm, until he overheard it. 2 gallery assistants huddled by the coat check, voices low but sharp. "Can you believe Alex invited Jasper? After that whole fistfight drama? Word is, they're still hooking up on the down low. Keeps the creative juices flowing, I guess." Gavin's blood turned to ice, the room tilting as laughter bubbled from nearby clusters. Lies, or truth rearing its ugly head? He found Alex by a towering piece called Tremor, deep in conversation with a silver-haired curator. "A word," Gavin said, voice low thunder, pulling him aside into a shadowed alcove. "What's this about you and Jasper? Still collaborating?" Alex's face paled, eyes widening in that telltale flicker of guilt. "Gav, it's nothing, gossip from bitter exes in the scene." Jasper's been texting. Yeah. But I blocked him weeks ago. But the hesitation in his voice, the way his gaze skittered to the floor, it was the alley all over again. Rain-slicked denial. Bullshit. Gavin's whisper was a hiss, fists clenching at his sides. You think I can't smell it? The same excuses. The same fucking bite. He yanked Alex's collar aside, revealing smooth skin, no marks, but the absence screamed louder than any bruise. Alex jerked back, hurt flashing in his eyes. You're doing it again, assuming the worst because you're scared. I told you, I'm done with him. Voices nearby hushed, heads turning like meerkats scenting scandal. Alex's cheeks flushed crimson, the artist's poise cracking under the scrutiny. Scared? Try scarred. Alex. Every time you schmooze, I see that mark. Every late night, I hear the lies. Gavin's voice rose, drawing stares, Jasper's included, smirking from across the room like he'd scripted the whole implosion. You kneel for forgiveness, but what about fighting for it? Or is this just another canvas for your drama? Alex's hand shot out, grabbing Gavin's wrist, not to hurt, but to hold, desperate. I am fighting. For us. But you keep pushing me away, like I'm the villain in your breakup song. Tears welled, spilling over as the curator cleared her throat awkwardly nearby. The gallery lights felt like spotlights now, exposing them raw and reeling. Gavin wrenched free, the Merlot sloshing over his hand like blood. Maybe you are. He stormed out into the snow, the door slamming behind him like a guillotine. The Soho streets were a winter wonderland for everyone else. Couples linking arms under twinkling storefronts, vendors hawking roasted chestnuts. But for Gavin, it was exile. He walked aimlessly, flakes melting on his lashes, the cold seeping into his bones until he ended up at Washington Square Park, the arch looming like a judgment. There, on a bench slick with frost, he broke, sobs racking him as the city blurred into white. The betrayal wasn't just Jasper. It was the erosion, the slow theft of certainty. Love, he thought, was the American dream repackaged. Two guys against the odds, building something unbreakable in the concrete jungle. But dreams curdled here, turned to nightmares under the weight of ambition and insecurity. Hours later, as the snow deepened to ankles, his phone vibrated. Alex. Where are you? Please. The show's a hit, but without you, it's hollow. I told Jasper to fuck off for good. Meet me at home? Attached was a photo. Alex in their kitchen, holding a canvas fresh from the easel, a portrait of them both, kneeling in rain, hands outstretched not in supplication, but in union. Titled Finally New. Gavin stared at it, thumb tracing the screen, the storm inside him howling for resolution. Home. The word pulled at him like gravity, but the drop terrified him still. Dawn crept over the skyline like a hesitant apology, gilding the brownstones in hesitant gold as Gavin pushed through the apartment door, snow melting into puddles on the threshold. The place was alive with Alex's chaos. Takeout containers scattered like confetti, the air thick with the acrid bite of fresh paint and cold pizza. Alex was sprawled on the couch, sketchpad clutched to his chest like a shield, eyes bloodshot from crying or not sleeping, maybe both. He bolted upright at the sight of Gavin, hope and fear warring on his face like thunderclouds. You're here. It was a whisper, fragile as the first light. Gavin nodded, shedding his soaked jacket, the weight of the night sloughing off with it. He crossed the room in 3 strides, dropping to his knees before the couch. Not in defeat, but in deliberate surrender. Alex's breath hitched, hands trembling as they cupped Gavin's face, thumbs brushing away the remnants of tears frozen on his cheeks. "I'm here," Gavin echoed, voice rough from the cold and the crying. "But we end this tonight one way or another. No more half-truths, no more ghosts." Alex nodded, fierce and fervent, pulling him up onto the couch, their bodies folding together like a well-worn map rediscovered. They talked until the sun climbed high, words spilling like the snowmelt outside, bearing the bones of their fears, the marrow of their aches. Alex admitted the pull of Jasper wasn't lust alone, but validation. The art world was a viper pit, critiques that flayed deeper than any knife, and Jasper's praise had been a balm for wounds Gavin couldn't see. "I thought if I chased that high, it'd make me worthy of you," he confessed, fingers tracing Gavin's scar. "But it just made me smaller." Gavin shared too, the Ohio boy who armored himself against loss, building walls so high even love couldn't scale them without triggering alarms. "That bite? It wasn't just betrayal. It was proof I wasn't enough to keep you." Alex's eyes welled anew, and he kissed him then. Slow, deliberate, a vow etched in salt and warmth. "You're everything. Let me show you." The showing came in layers, peeled back over days that blurred into a tentative thaw. They canceled holiday plans. No fraught family dinners in Philly or virtual toasts with Gavin's estranged sister in Cleveland, instead carving out a bubble. Marathon viewings of Before Sunrise knockoffs, playlists of mixtapes from their early days, The National's Brooding Ache, Sufjan Stevens' tender falsettos, and nights where sex was sacrament, bodies relearning trust in the sacred geometry of skin on skin. Christmas Eve found them at Lena's holiday group session for queer couples, a circle of folding chairs in her office, fairy lights twinkling like stars in the void. Stories circled the room. A trans woman and her wife navigating HRT transitions, a bi couple mending after an open relationship misfire, Gavin and Alex sharing their alley epiphany. "We knelt," Gavin said, hand clasped in Alex's, "and found the ground solid after all." Laughter rippled, warm as mulled wine, and for the first time, Gavin felt the city's pulse sync with his own, not as predator, but partner. The new year dawned with reinvention. Alex's show sold out, 3 pieces to a collector who called Neil a queer odyssey for the ages, and he funneled the check into a joint studio space in Dumbo, walls wide enough for 2 dreamers. Gavin's set at the Bowery went viral on TikTok, snippets of Bite Back racking up millions, leading to a Label Scouts email that promised a debut EP. But success didn't eclipse the small graces. Morning coffees shared on the fire escape, Alex's head on Gavin's lap as he strummed half-formed melodies, the way they now joked about Jasper, that walking bad decision, turning poison into punchline. Spring unfurled like a promise kept, cherry blossoms dusting the park paths as they walked, hands swinging loose. One April afternoon, by the Bethesda fountain where tourists fed the pigeons and buskers strummed for dollars, Alex stopped, dropping to one knee with a dramatic flourish that drew gasps from passers-by. In his palm, not a ring, but a silver chain with a pendant, a tiny, etched guitar pick intertwined with a paintbrush. "Marry me?" he asked, grin crooked as ever. "Not legally. Fuck that noise, but in our way. Kneel with me, Gav. For the wreckage and the wonder." Gavin laughed through tears, hauling him up into an embrace that blocked out the world. "Yes." 1,000 times. They kissed amid applause from strangers, the fountain's spray misting their faces like benediction. But humanism isn't fairy tales. It's the grit beneath the gloss. Months later, on a sweltering July night, the cracks resurfaced, not betrayal, but burnout. Alex's first solo exhibit in Chelsea tanked, critics calling it derivative, and he spiraled, locking himself in the studio until Gavin pounded the door down. "We're not unbreakable," Gavin said, pulling him into the light, "but we're bendable. Lean on me." They fought. Ugly words hurled like grenades, but made up in the morning, stronger for the bend. Gavin's EP dropped that fall, Tremors and Knees, a raw diptych of loss and reclamation that charted indie airwaves. At the release party in a packed dive on Avenue A, Alex took the stage uninvited, mic in hand. "This man's heart is a revolution. And I'm the lucky bastard who gets to march in it." The crowd roared, but Gavin heard only the truth in his eyes. "I know now. We both do." Years later, in a Brooklyn brownstone bought with royalties and residuals, they'd tell the story to wide-eyed queer kids at open mics. How pain trembled them to their knees, but love raised them wiser. Gavin, gray threading his temples, strumming for a new generation. Alex, curls silvered, sketching portraits that captured souls. The bite mark? A faint silver scar, worn like a badge, proof that knowing truly, deeply sets you free. In the end, New York didn't break them. They broke it open, together.